That would be it as far as the cron jobs are concerned and cron in general. One more thing to mention is that cron is a daemon, so it does run in the background. You can restart it with a service command just in case you're uncertain whether something's going to work or not, but it should work without the restart as well. It does work. There was probably something else wrong with that command that I was issuing it. But in any case, what you need to know is that the cron job that runs in the background, here let me actually show it to you, ps aux grep cron. So we got two of them. One is grep, which we are not interested in. We are interested in the first one that I have selected here. You can see that it is running, and it is running indeed. It checks for these things every minute. 1 minute is the minimum interval refresh rate. I have pulled out that term. I've scrapped it out of my head. Don't hold my word to it, but to the term itself. But this is absolutely correct. Every 30 minutes, it conducts a check. So every minute it conducts a check. 1 minute is that time frame where it conducts a check. Anyway, as I was saying, this was it as far as the cron jobs are concerned. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into user management. That's quite interesting, as it does directly allow you to see the usefulness of those particular commands. Of course, all the commands that I've taught you thus far and all the things that I've taught you thus far, they will be of use to you as a system administrator. Most of them are a must-have skill, but user management is, if you do not know how to manage users, and by that I mean create, delete, assign groups, permissions, etc. for users, well, you won't be able to do most of the things that an administrator would do on the server. It is an absolute must-have that you need to know. Anyway, that awaits us in the next chapter. For the time being, we are done with cron jobs, and we will eventually go into regular expressions as well, where you will see bash scripting and so on and so forth. Until then, I bid you all farewell, and I wish you a ton load of luck.
Welcome all to this tutorial and to this chapter. In this chapter, I will be talking about users and user management. This is of utmost importance to you, primarily because if you plan to work as a network administrator, or if you're providing technical support or something of a kind, you will inevitably have to create users, delete users, lock them, unlock them, etc. You are bound to receive phone calls throughout the day or support requests that somebody has locked themselves out of their accounts, or that they can't log into their account, or that there is some sort of problem with the login. You will be required to solve such problems. Here I will teach you pretty much all that there is to know about users, their creation, deletion, setting password rules, not password rules, but passwords for the rules for expiration of passwords, and so on. As I said, please, if you are already here, pay close attention here, especially to this chapter, because you will need it in order to pass the Red Hat certified exam, certified system administrator exam, and you will need it if you plan to work as a network administrator. This is definitely one of those fields that will occupy a large chunk of your time in the real world. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this tutorial and see what can we actually learn. So first off, let us have a look at the files where user information is stored. Now, you need to go into etc, so cat etc, and I will do the passwd file, press enter. There are a lot of users here. So not all of these users are the users with which you can actually log into the system. Rather, instead, they are system users. So for example, what shall we take? SSH daemon has its own user, which is through which it actually runs. They do not require passwords. They are just users for certain processes to run with a very specific set of permissions for security reasons. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive down into our user, which we are using currently, which I am using currently. Yours could be different. It is whatever you typed in during the installation. So mine is random guy. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. I mean, there is a lot of information there, and I would like to actually just view that user separately. So what have we learned before? With a grep command, just do the same thing as we did before, cat, and then pipe it to grep, or this should work too. Without the cat, you can do one single command, grep, what shall we grep, ran, and there we go. So you can put grep in front as well without piping it through. You can just pass a file to grep. Anyway, here I have pulled out this line. Didn't need to pull the entire username. Ran was enough. So here you have the username, which is random guy. This X signifies that there is a password, that there is a properly encrypted password in the etc shadow file where all the passwords are stored for users. Notice that users are stored separately from their passwords. Passwords are in a different file which is encrypted and accessible to root. Over here, the next number, this number 1000 that you see, this is the UID or unique user identifier. There are 65,000 or 64,000, if I'm not mistaken, possible users that you can create on one single system. So that's a lot. So feel free to create as many as you like. It is not very likely that you will encounter systems where you will need more where you will need thousands upon thousands and upon thousands of users, the systems which will require more than 64,000 users. That is not very likely, although it is possible. Next up is the unique identifier for groups, so GID, group identifier, also 1000. So by default, if you create a user in Red Hat Linux, and generally in Linux as well, that user will become a member of a group which is named the same way that user has been named. So random guy belongs to the group random guy. That is its default primary group. Every user within Red Hat has to be a member of at least one primary group. So you have primary groups and then you have secondary groups. We will cover this when we get to that section of this chapter. But for the time being, know that this first number, 1000, signifies the UID, and that the second number signifies the GID. The GID tends to be different from the UID, I don't know, from time to time, depends on what sort of a user have you created and to which groups have you assigned it. For example, let's say that a random guy is an accountant in some sort of a firm, any kind of a firm, let's say a butchery, and he's not a member of the group which is named by him. He's not a member of random guy. Rather, instead, he would be a member of accounting. So this would be 1000 and this would be some other number. So random guy with this UID would be a member of a group that is not random guy, rather instead that is accounting with a different GID. It might seem a little bit confusing, but no big deal. When I show you demonstrations later on, this will become a lot clearer. This is not an especially difficult chapter. It is, I would say, a rather easy chapter, but it does require you to pay a little bit attention and to follow through the demonstrations, and then you will be able to handle it. Anyway, next up you have the home directory of the user. So usually the home directory is just home and then the user name, and after that come all those other folders that we are used to seeing. Depends on what you've assigned to be created by default. Next up is the default shell which that user runs, which is bin bash. There are multiple shells. I will also cover this in the follow-up tutorials within this particular chapter. Anyway, now that we have examined the etc password file, let's go ahead and clear the screen and do the same